So I first got into aquaponics back in grad school. I was thinking about fun experiments that we could be doing with plants and fish in kind of an ecosystems approach to hydroponics. And thought about doing some aquaponics, and I thought it was this fresh, new, great idea. Started doing a little research on it and found out that a lot of people have been doing it for a really long time. So I kind of looked at the space and decided that we needed kind of a little bit of a fresh approach. And I noticed that some of the issues that we deal with here in Wyoming with the cold and with the wind and with the cost of heating were a little bit unique compared to a lot of the folks who had done some of the initial research. So these folks were down in tropical areas or warmer areas, and the cost of the space was not as high. So we decided to go vertical with our production, and our reasoning there was hopefully we could get a little bit more out of the space by growing vertically as opposed to horizontally. The result of that was I tried a lot of the tower systems on the market and was just really unhappy with them. So I decided we needed a redesign. So I went back to the drawing board and I came up with the Zipro tower, which is kind of a new design for growing vertically. So all of this research was initially in the context of aquaponics. And aquaponics is just a form of hydroponics, which is soilless growing, but we use fish waste instead of a commercial fertilizer. So I had tanks set up, I had fish in those tanks, and then I'd cycle all of that fish waste and all of that solids, all of the solids in that water, I'd cycle them through the towers and use the towers to filter the waste and clean the water for the fish while supplementing the nutrition for the plants. So that's aquaponics. And these days I do both hydroponics and aquaponics. We use towers in both, and depending on the application, really. So towards the end of my research at the university, I was really happy with the performance of these towers that I developed. They handled solids great. They allowed me to grow vertically. My production was about triple what I could get growing horizontally. And I started wondering if other people had this problem and if other people wanted something like this. So that was kind of the thought process that spurred me to get a company going around this product. And the result of that was Bright Agrotech. So we formed the company, we started manufacturing these towers, and we started selling them, and mostly to aquaponics folks because they work really well in aquaponics systems. But over time, that market's grown. We're doing a lot more commercial installations. A lot of people are really excited about doing local foods and serving their community with stuff that they're growing right there. And one of the fun things that we're able to do is we're able to take the tower live to market, and then people just harvest their own right at the market. So this is actually a really fun thing for me because I just love the idea of people cutting something fresh, cutting something alive right there in the supermarket. It's just really great to see all these small farmers getting started. And there's a lot of pains that people go through. We've started kind of this farmers network called Upstart Farmers that allows people basically who haven't ever farmed before to get off the ground, figure out how to enter their markets and sell their produce. And that's really been the most fun thing for me is seeing all these young guys get started, seeing all of these brand new farmers get going in their markets. So that's definitely a blast. And I love that they're doing live sales because one of the points of the equipment in the first place was to get live sales going. Expose people to the product, expose people to the idea that you can harvest things alive in your supermarket. And that really pumped me up because you're giving your consumers a fresh product. You're giving them something that's really delicious because it is super fresh and really nutritious. So there's all sorts of benefits that come from this live sales model, and that's really something that we've pioneered. So it's kind of cool to feel like you own something. It's kind of cool to feel like people are using your idea, and that's really super rewarding. The company's kind of run on this idea that we try to do the fun stuff, and that's not always possible, but we do have an awful lot of really fun projects going right now. Everything from these really cool indoor growing operations that we build with all this high-tech stuff, all the way down to things like green walls or our spring systems for home and hobby growers, that kind of thing. And it's a lot of fun. I really love the idea that beautiful things can be functional things and functional things can be beautiful things. We're pretty jazzed about all the stuff that's going on right now. And we think that as we move into the future, a lot of the stuff that we're doing now is going to play a big role in how people get their food down the road. One of the things that really drives me crazy is the amount of just bare concrete walls and empty urban space. These are things that we've taken for granted. This is real estate that's completely undervalued. The sides of buildings, and you know, we're surrounded by these things all day long, and we don't realize how ugly they are. We don't realize how soul-killing they can be. So the idea of actually covering those in plants, that's what really excites me. But you know, we've struggled to figure out how to do that as really cost effectively. So the Green Wall project is really an experiment in seeing how we can cover those walls in an economic fashion, something that a farmer could reasonably implement and make money on, but also something that, you know, experimenting with the idea that this can be something that's beautiful. This can be something that's functional. It can make money for farmers. It can insulate buildings. It can improve urban spaces. It can improve the general outlook of the public that's exposed to it. And that's the stuff that really excites us. The idea that we can fundamentally impact the way cities look and the way that people interact with their environment. Up until this point, there's been this real one-size-fits-all approach to growing products for markets. And that's changing very quickly as people want to see more and more local products, as people want to know the guy that grows their food. People are starting to demand a lot more of the system. So it's an exciting time to be doing this, because people are starting to think about farming in a whole different way. Now, instead of thinking about everything as kind of this commodity, people are thinking about, well, maybe these high water weight products we can grow locally, and we can grow stuff like grain somewhere else, you know, because that makes more sense. But stuff, you know, like lettuce, things like, you know, these crops that we can grow in urban environments, why aren't we growing more of them there? And people are thinking about this, and so it's really exciting to be able to take our equipment and say, hey, this is how we can achieve these goals. We've been thinking about this for a really long time, and we're ready to act right now. So we farm here on the high dry plains of Laramie, Wyoming, and when we tell people that we live and we're farming here in Laramie, they usually laugh. You know, it's usually the second poorest county in the state, and you know, we're kind of in this miserable environment. It's 30 degrees below zero for a lot of February, and the wind blows, and it's just generally pretty miserable during the winter. But what's really great about Laramie is it's a small community, and the people have really embraced us here. So we've got a ton of community support, and we just have our CSA customers are just the best customers in the world. From that perspective, operating here in Laramie has been great, even though the market size is not very big. Kind of to overcome that, we actually have an operation down in Colorado now, so we operate on the Front Range as well. But this is kind of home base, and this is the place where we love to be. When it comes to producing aquaponically, we haven't had anyone that's been negative about it, really. Most people are really excited. Honestly, folks don't usually understand what we're doing, whether it's hydroponics or aquaponics. They're usually just taking our word for it. You know, when we say our product is safe, and we shake their hand and we say, hey, come in whenever you want. You can audit what we're using on this stuff. You can see what we're doing any day of the week. You're welcome. That's what people trust. That's what people want to hear. And so for our customers, a lot of the time we can say we're doing it hydroponically, we're doing it aquaponically, and you know, they say, okay, that sounds good. I don't really care too much, so long as it's safe, as long as it's local, as long as there's accountability and transparency in how things are being grown. So as long as we're giving them those three things, they're usually very happy. No one really says, oh, I don't want aquaponic, I want hydroponic, or really the other way around, which is great. So no, there's been a lot of support for aquaponic production here in Laramie. The folks in our CSA, our restaurants, our grocery stores, these folks have been incredibly supportive. I could not ask for better customers. So a lot of folks ask how aquaponics can change farming, or what role it has to play in our food system. And I always tell people, you know, it plays a role. Of course, it's never going to be the dominant form of plant production, but it has the potential to play a big role. It's an elegant system. It's a beautiful system. You're using waste from one system to feed another. And that's really cool, and actually that's really admirable The issue is markets, right? Because aquaponic farmers usually have higher costs, so their margins are lower. So until people are willing to pay more for aquaponic produce over, say, traditional hydroponic produce, aquaponic farmers are usually at a disadvantage. But there are a lot of really great markets that aquaponic farmers can get into where they can make money and they can get going. And we see the industry growing, so people are excited about it. And it's moving forward despite some of these drawbacks, which is really encouraging because as time goes on, people are going to figure out how to do it and operate with lower costs and on a more competitive margin with the traditional growers. So a lot of folks ask this really general kind of question about the future of farming. And it's a hard question to answer because they're looking for the super radical idea, these huge vertical farms and this incredibly intensive kind of horticulture. And I don't necessarily think we're going to see that, but I think that they would be delighted by what farming will look like 50 and 100 years from now. The way technology is being leveraged in the farming industry is just amazing. The people that are coming to the industry right now, they're incredibly hopeful, they're incredibly smart and intelligent, they're concerned about the right things when it comes to the food supply. So in that regard, I think farming is going to be awesome. As far as practically what we're going to see is we're going to see a lot more urban farming. So the future that I want to live in, farming and architecture are almost indistinguishable. Where a building stops and a farm begins, the average person walking down the street would have a hard time delineating the two. And I think our city spaces are going to be much greener than they currently are. I think people are going to be interacting with their food on a daily basis. This means they're going to be interacting with green walls and living food displays. And I think we're going to be farming in some very interesting environments. Whether it's a skyscraper, I don't know about that, but certainly many more warehouse-based farms, many more farms that are really high-intensity rooftop farms. Basically, we're going to be bumping into farming every single day, whether you live in the country or whether you live in the city.